Welcome, and thank you for joining Painting with Picasso's Grapevine. My name is Leanna Hahn, and I'll be your host and teacher for today. Today we have a very black canvas in front of us, and so we're going to use this to kind of talk a little bit about just blending, creating kind of obscure, abstract creations. So today we're going to achieve an effect that's just kind of more of a field of flowers effect, but I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to do this without getting too detailed. So something to keep in mind, the eye does a fabulous job at finishing a painting. So remember that. You don't have to finish the painting. There's a lot to be said about placing suggestions, putting highlights, and then your eye will actually complete it. So to start off, we're going to talk a little bit about our supplies today, as we always do. We are working with our acrylic paints, and for today we're going to be using some very light cad yellow. We have white and black, usually our basics. We have alizarin crimson, and we have some red as well. And then as far as our paintbrushes, again, I like a nice big, very rounded edge paintbrush to do my back strokes and things of that nature. This is a number 12 filbert, but again, pick what you're comfortable with. Again, moving to the medium size, I like a nice medium one, just get you a little bit closer for those medium touch-ups. And then as well, I always have my two favorites, a very small brush that we'll use for some details, and then along with that we have, it's a small, but again, I like this very crisp edge, using that as sometimes a paintbrush, or rather a pencil drawing, turning it to the side, using it more like a pencil. So these are kind of my favorites. Don't forget, of course, we need our cup of water because we're working with acrylics, and we'll need to be washing off as we're moving and transitioning from one color to another. And then last but not least, we have our dab rag, keeping in mind that we do have water on the canvas here. When we're moving our paintbrushes into the water, we don't want to get too much water on the canvas that will pull away the paint. So you can fix it, but you don't want to waste your time after you've worked so hard on that painting. So what I'm going to start out with is my very large brush, going ahead and dipping that into our water, getting it moist. And I'm going to start with kind of defining or segregating this particular canvas in two. I'm going to leave some of this dark, nice black tones on the bottoms and create some highlights by bringing in introducing some nice color on top. I went ahead and covered this in black. Now, you can gesso this, you can use black paint. I just use black acrylic paint. Just take my strokes up and down. As you can see, it's not even completely quite dry yet, but that's okay. It's a very messy painting. So, starting with the top, we're going to be moving up and down. Now, my idea is that I want to visually decide that my canvas is going to be covered predominantly in white, about almost halfway up, but not quite. It's a little bit less than halfway at the top. And I'm taking those strokes, moving them up and down from the top of the canvas. Now, how much paint should I add? So I'm creating a nice blended feel. I want some of this black to be showing through, but I don't want it to be completely dimpled in the middle. So to achieve that, we need to go over and add enough white to create those streaky feels, but not leave too much dimpling in there. So if you're not getting the effect you want, simply just add more paint. Pretty simple. I'm not going to worry too much about the bottom of my paint here. Even though I put those lines, I'm just letting that fall off the canvas. So don't stop and start hard because you don't want those strokes to show through. We do want a very complete, continued feel going down the canvas. So if you find that you've done that, just go over it. Go over it quickly with some paint, some nice moist wet paint. That'll remove it. I am taking my strokes up and down. If you want to move just down, moving from the top down only, you can do that. There's no science to this right now. It is really what you feel good with, what makes you comfortable, and what helps you achieve the look you're going for. So you notice I'm going back over, adding some more paint, filling in some of those dimpled areas. Now I don't want solid white. I do want kind of a blended feel. And you're going to get that by reactivating some of this paint. So once you're placing that white paint on top of that black paint, even though some of it's dry, you're kind of going to be reactivating it because it's moist. And that's good. We want that. Continuing across. Again, taking those strokes up and down. Filling in and creating a bit of a streaking feel. Now this is a 16 by 20 canvas. This particular painting can be done on any size canvas, a very, very loose, and I like loose paintings because they're easy to achieve. Their proportions are not tight. So if my dimensions are off from perhaps the original, it still looks good. And you'll notice there's probably, you see some paint flying in here, so do be careful of that. Paint gets messy. All right. So we've got that first streak feel across the canvas, jumping in, adding a little bit more, but not worrying too much. If I've got a little bit of dimpling going on, it's okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wash off this brush. We're going to transition into that red. And I like that really brilliant, beautiful alizarin crimson. It's a nice, deep, rich red. And it just gives it a nice, beautiful pop right off the canvas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this kind of down the middle. Now, here's the one thing, and I say it all the time and I repeat over and over again, do not create straight lines. So what we're doing is kind of creating a background where we're going to place some flowers. So the focus here will be to create a feeling of, it's a field of flowers. So don't make the middle section like a straight lane across. Go ahead and create some variations. Take it up a little higher, take it up a little lower. But we're just going to kind of create this middle tone. So you'll hear me repeat this quite a bit. I try to create it's a highlight, it's a depth, it's a dark tone, and it's the middle tone. So red is going to be your middle tone as you move across the canvas. You'll notice I've got some spiking up here in the middle, and I'm dropping down below that line as well. I'm taking it down a little further into the black. And with this layer, we are achieving more of a consistent feel down the middle here. So we're covering that white and that black, so you don't see where the two kind of merge and blend. But it's kind of creating just a shadow. Something's going on in the background. Continuing across, and again, watch your strokes on the back because you're going to see a lot of these strokes. So don't let them hard stop. If you find there's any hard stops in there, go ahead. Just go over it with some wet paint. Cover it up. And then we'll continue across the canvas. Finishing, and you know what, let's take this side up here. We'll take the side up here. Again, making it inconsistent. I just don't want a straight line going across. You'll never look out across a field of flowers and see a straight line. You'll see different heights. You'll see some flowers popping up. You'll see different depths, different colors. It is a brilliant combination of all different heights, all different colors. And that's what makes it so attractive to the eye. It's that combination. Just adding a little bit more paint to my palette so we can kind of finish that up. Going up and down, just making sure that, again, that middle section is covered. And then don't forget, step back. Take a look at your painting. You're going to find that your painting, as you are closer to your painting, you really can't see it in entirety. You need to step back, take a look. How is it looking? What have I missed? So I've got some nice variations on top here. Let's make sure that that variation continues on the bottom. So I'm feeling like it's too consistent on the bottom. I'm going to take this down a little bit. And just carry that through and say, all right. Filling in the middle section, getting some nice coverage. As you can see, this is very, very abstract, very easy to achieve. Don't sweat it, don't overpaint it. Once you've got it covered, stop, that's good. Let's go ahead and wash off our paintbrush. And then the next thing that we're going to move on to is just kind of giving you some suggestions of flowers. So I'm not going to complete this entire painting with all the flowers. That's really up to you. You can add as many as you like, as few as you like. But what I'm going to do is kind of give you some hints and suggestions on how to create flowers that are not very hard. So keep in mind, this field of flowers is far away, so it's not right in front of you. You don't have to get to a very finite detail to show a flower. So what we're going to do is start with our medium round paintbrush. Go ahead, dab that into the water. And we're just going to decide. All right, so we've got some height here, we've got some variations here. Let's decide that we're going to put just a few flowers out there. Now, to start out with, I'm going to go again with that beautiful alizarin crimson. And I'm going to be mixing right on the palette here. And I'm doing that because I have a nice wet palette right now. And just kind of creating, what I'm going to call is a blob. It's a blob. And in my mind, these blobs are going to be poppies. So you're kind of setting them out there. I'm grabbing a little bit of the white, and I'm placing a little bit of the white on top. And you notice it's a very loose interpretation. If you stood right on top of it, looks like a blob. Once you stand back, you're like, okay, that looks like a flower. So I'm going to go ahead and place a few more flowers out here, as we finally call them our flower blobs. Again, not worrying about too much of the definition, just placing them out there, going ahead and deciding. You'll hear me said many times using that flashlight effect. If my flashlight was shining down on the canvas, where would the light fall? So I'm going to say that the light's falling here. It could be falling straight down. This whole composition of this painting lends itself to the light is falling straight down. So let's go ahead and just grab a little bit of light right on top. And here's another thing. Don't make the flowers all the same size. We're going to make them different sizes, adding a little bit of light on the top. So to complete these flowers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wash off some of that paint, and I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. So a yellow is another way to show highlight. We're going to put this just kind of right on top of those flowers, very loose. You can create some depth by blotting. You can create some swoops. These are very vague flowers, so you don't have to worry about too much the exactness of the flower. The hint of it is really all your eye needs to really complete it. Now, the last thing I'm going to do on these particular flowers, I'm going to go ahead and move into that tiny little brush, and I'm going to grab just a bit of my black, and we're going to tell the world that here is the center of the flower. Don't make it a complete round. Keep in mind that this is a very loose flower, so if you put very specific round dots, it's going to look a little weird. It's not going to match. So I'm following the form of the flower. I'm just creating a very almost oval shape, kind of very loose. So the next thing that we're going to do is I'm going to give you some hints on how to just kind of create some variation with the stems of the flowers. So moving back to that middle brush. And this part really, which brush you use for this is totally up to you. I am using this brush because I intend on turning it sideways and using it as a pencil. I very frequently use those very small, tight brushes to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just create streaks. And I'm not even going to complete them. They're intended to be just reeds, stems of the flowers, things that are growing out of out of the field of flowers. So our eye needs a little bit more help with that. So I'm going to complete that help with just a tiny bit of a hint of a leaf. Again, don't make them very large. Don't make them very crisp. I like using this brush because, again, I start with the side and kind of wisp it up. And you hear me say that a lot, wispy. Everything's kind of wispy, so. And you can let these go off the canvas if you like. This is very loose. You don't have to put them right below the flower either. Just remember, this is a very loose field of flowers. So while this could be the stem that goes to that flower, don't worry about it. The less you worry about making it very exact, the better effect that you will have. And here's another thing. Don't push them all in the same direction. Have them go in different directions. Have them compete with each other. Because I don't think anybody has been in a field of flowers where everything is pointing the same direction. Create some variation with the size of your streaks. So let them be a little bit larger towards the bottom, let them be a little bit thinner towards the top, but you don't have to have them consistently all that way. You can just create some very inconsistent. So I'm just kind of jumping all over because I don't care. Just kind of placing them out there. And these are kind of those one and dones. This is just like, just Shazam. Just put it across the canvas, let it lay there, don't fix it. This will give you a better feel. So your homework today is to go ahead, work on those flowers, get a few more of those flowers out there. Again, the technique is keeping it very loose. Starting out with that mid-tone. We had that nice red. We added some highlight right on top where the light was coming down. We added a little bit more variation in color, give it some depth, give it some highlight, and then placement of the middle section of the flower, just so the eye knows, oh yeah, that's a flower. Thank you again for joining Picasso, Painting with Picasso's Grapevine.